Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MediaJel podcast. I'm your host, Guillermo Bravo. Thank you for joining us today as we discuss how to build a omni-channel marketing experience for cannabis retail and delivery services with Dennis O'Malley. MediaJel connects brands and retailers with cannabis consumers through our ad network of mainstream publishers, mobile apps, games, and TV. We help cannabis companies advertise on Google, support an SEO, and activate data with display advertising to support e-commerce sales. I'd like to introduce Dennis O'Malley. Dennis is a serial entrepreneur and founder of Caliva, one of the largest vertically integrated retailers in California that was acquired by Jay-Z's The Parent Company. Dennis has a breadth of experience in the cannabis industry, and I can't wait to hear his insights today. Thank you for joining us, Dennis.
Guillermo, thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, likewise. Well, let's start from the top. What did your career look like before entering the cannabis space?
I almost can't remember given all the battle scars over the last 5.5, 6 years on it. But before cannabis, it was really focused on technology and different parts of technology, and really one area that really was I think a good transition from getting into cannabis was what we had founded at Ready Pulse in 2010, 2011. We really wanted to drive authentic marketing. We thought that putting models front and center of your marketing didn't make sense, and we thought that customers were the best form of marketing, and we sought out technology solutions to do just that. People trust people, not ads. And we really tried to be able to say, how do you put your best form of marketing, your customers front and center of your marketing? We developed technology to be able to track social media at the time, which was still emerging in Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and we put those photos front and center in over 300 websites of the Red Bulls, the GoPros, the Nikes, the Adidas, the North Faces, and had really just amazing partnerships and really for years sat with brand marketing teams that developed these really authentic marketing for inspirational brands and had a seat at a table around doing that. We sold that company in 2016 to a company called Expert Voice, and Expert Voice had 2 million trusted experts who really were, think of like the lifeguards of the world, or the ski patrols of the world, or even the store associates and Dick's Sporting Goods who were most knowledgeable in the shoe section, and they had to be trusted experts in terms of what type of products that they wore and used, etc. And being able to take that, I'd say that online and that really social proof that authentic marketing in context to commerce provided, as well as that in real life trusted expert, that translated extremely well in terms of going into cannabis, where those marketing activations of social proof and then trusted experts translated into some of the only forms of marketing that cannabis brands and retailers could actually execute on. As we know, the performance marketing playbook in cannabis, there's no CPC button for there's no really CTA that you'd have on an Instagram post. So you need to be super creative if you're in cannabis to get your message out there for sure.
Yeah, and how do you leverage this previous experience when building Caliva?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think when you look at building anything, you always got to go back to the core on everything. And I came into Caliva 2017, and there was a core team that had built it from 2015 to 2017 and did an amazing job. But I think what had helped coalesce what the story was, it was really just trying to develop a North Star. And it was, why do we exist? And we talked about, existing for that informed consumer. And we defined an informed consumer about asking one simple question, which is, what am I putting into my body? And we developed the brand values around that, which were, consistency, transparency, and accessibility. And we really tried to think of those brand values and those pillars as everything that we did in terms of product, whether it was product development around consistency, whether it's level service of consistency, in terms of transparency, being very open as to how we made products and what we did and what we're all about, and then lastly is something that we leaned on heavily, which is accessibility. We just we definitely had a mission to make our products, very accessible to those who sought that out. So I think in terms of leveraging experience in Caliva as we started to build things, the depth of the story that you need about a brand and the ability to have that type of North Star and to build campaigns around it really served as a good guide for us to be able to go through some of those activations that eventually were activations around letting our customers tell great stories, having social proof, and then certainly through our wellness consultants, training them as trusted experts so that we were really what we tried to be, which was that most trusted name in cannabis. And that was our moniker, for many years, is to be able to go build that trust with all of our constituents.
And I'm one of your ideal consumers. I care about what I'm putting in my body, and I love I love that as kind of your true north and the transparency and accessibility that you provide. I mean, that's really hitting home, and it's that's the brand equity and trust that you need to build to really sustain yourself in a competitive market like California, especially down in San Jose, right?
Sure. Yeah, it served as a good guidepost for us.
Yeah, and I remember following Caliva and the campaigns that you ran as far as like accessibility in San Francisco Bay Area. Like, you guys had a wide reach on the customers that you were actually servicing, like from San Francisco to Oakland, all down the peninsula, down to San Jose. Like, you were really, as far as the delivery aspect of the business, you were really, you were everywhere.
Yeah, and it takes a concerted effort to do that. I mean, I give a ton of credit to Rosie Rothrock, who is the creative lead today for the parent company, who came up with probably 90% of our campaign ideas, and trying to drive brand awareness and service awareness and product awareness in cannabis is really tough. But I think she did an amazing job of putting together some evergreen type of campaigns that you can actually build on top of and have some direct response activations around that. Those campaigns are expensive, and it takes a long time for those to pay off. But again, I give a lot of credit for Rizzy for developing campaigns that had a lot of legs and could actually last for a long time for us to be able to execute, some direct response capabilities off of.
Well, kudos to Rosie for being such a rock star on that front, and just knocking it out of the park on that on those marketing campaigns. Dennis, like, what problems did you identify when you first got into the cannabis space when you launched, or when you joined Caliva in 2017?
Yeah, well, I think sometimes just learning from a lot of my mistakes and some of the more stupid ones, I think are good touch points on it. But one that sticks out to me was I was convinced after going into all the dispensaries and trying to figure out samples and how the wholesale sales team was giving things away, that I was going to develop an app for samples, and what we were going to do is we were going to have bud tenders sign up, and we were going to have wholesale reps provide the samples and be able to track who got the samples and get reviews. And concept was fantastic, and we actually went to go develop the MVP, and then I went back out with the sales reps again, and I said, hey, let's go try this out. And all the reps said, dude, that they're not going to let you pull out a mobile phone in the store, right? And I said, come on, that can't be just this store and that store. And lo and behold, back in 2017, almost no one let any type of mobile phone actually be accessed in their stores. So great idea. That was a couple of years too early for its time. So when you started to think through that, cannabis in many different ways, you really got to be creative and understand a lot of the regulatory environments in terms of how to go to market and all of those types of things. And I think over time, leaning on great partners, it's the difference between having a marketing partner who knows cannabis and doesn't know cannabis, because they've gone through and they're battle tested, with all those regulations. And so, I think on a move forward basis, some of the smartest things that we did is really team up with people, whether it was in influencer marketing or programmatic, with you guys and others, to be able to say, hey, let's look at folks who have actually cut their teeth in the cannabis industry.
Yeah, I remember those days when I couldn't use a phone in retail stores, and I remember, it's kind of speaking to the transparency. Like, when you want to build trust for a retail store And when it's a new market, people still don't trust cannabis stores. Like they kind of, some of them have, metal frames on the windows and stuff. They don't look as welcoming, right? And one of the ways that I recommended for people to provide transparency into their space was to do one of those Google 360 views of your store. But even back then, like, people didn't want consumers to see the inside of their store because they thought they were going to rob them, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of hesitancy there, but I'm happy to see that we finally reached this point where you can use phones, and now cannabis companies are getting the value of user-generated content, right? They want people to post pictures on Instagram, on Facebook, on anywhere, because there's not that many places for you to market your cannabis retail store. So anything that you can get from influencers for any of your consumers is a win.
Yeah, I mean, look at Planet 13 in Santa Ana, right? They have the made for Instagram kind of moments walking through the lobby, and I'm glad to see that that cannabis has progressed to be able to go do that. I think it's good for the industry.
100%, and they've done some great drone videos. I know at their Vegas store too. Those are incredible.
Yeah, they are.
As far
full scale for sure.
Yeah. As far as Caliva, did you when you joined in 2017, was the company already vertically integrated, or is this something that you implemented?
Yeah, we implemented vertical integration because it was the regulatory environment we had to be. So, San Jose actually had a pretty progressive and successful program that they had laid out, which is they actually required all 16 of the license holders to be vertically integrated. So we had to be vertically integrated. Now, to the extent that you needed to expand in that vertical integration was, somewhat up to you on that. And vertical integration really meant that you, actually had your own grow and that you had a, retail license. And so you saw a lot of people in San Jose be successful and some focused on different parts of the business. But we certainly leaned into the vertical integration, mainly around products, somewhat early on, at Caliva in 2017. I think some of the things that we did well at the time is we were, some of the leaders in terms of having just a very compliant process, having childproof packaging. We were testing before most, others weren't. And so when those, regulations really came into enforcement in 2018, we were ready. And so that was a milestone that we were ready for, and that was a step change in the business. And then again, as another step change in the business, when COVID hit, we had certainly had our delivery had ramped up, and we had electronic payments. And so some of the things that we did well in terms of vertical integration was just being prepared for real sea changes within the industry and regulatory environments. And those were places that we were prepared for. But yeah, the San Jose had required vertical integration, and hence that therefore when Caliva was founded in 2015, they founded it as a vertically integrated company.
Good to know. And then, I mean, how's that market in San Jose looking now? Like, is it?
I think what's most interesting today is that the existing license holders are going to receive another license, and so it'll be interesting to see how many other license holders build another retail location in San Jose. With San Jose being, people forget it's the number, it's the 10th largest city in the country. And it has a higher population than somebody like San Francisco. So I think on one hand, the San Jose will be well served by an increased number of dispensaries that will lead to competition, but I think that will be outweighed by the zoning that San Jose will have in terms of the new places where those stores can actually be located are not going to be in the industrial zones that they were zoned for originally. They're going to be in much more attractive, retail areas. So I believe that will, outweigh any additional competition is the just amount of convenience that people will have to be able to go to a more convenient upscale retail experience.
Yeah, and do you think San Jose did it right by limiting the number of licenses to actually give a shot to all these retailers instead of, like Santa Rosa, where I am now, they have kind of no cap on retailers. and it's very hard for these retailers. Actually, they're not vertically integrated in most cases, so it's hard for them to even break even. Right?
Yeah, I mean, everything's hard in cannabis, and it's a matter of what degrees of difficulty that you're in, for sure. I think, again, looking back on it, what San Jose did is not only did they require vertical integration, they actually funded their enforcement and their compliance team kind of extremely well. So they had a very well run program that collaborated, I think, extremely well with a lot of the providers. We had a great, relationship with the San Jose PD over the years, and certainly, still do. And I think they have done a great job in terms of funding that program. In cannabis, competition is you compete against the legal players, the non-legal players, those who are have retailers, those who have deliveries. You compete against other types of spend, and so it's a very competitive environment, and it is a challenge all around. But I think there's a whole bunch of reasons why people like you, me, and others are in the industry to be able to get it to a place where we really can bring those plant-based solutions to people to be able to improve their daily lives. And I know the teams that I've worked with always kept that in mind, that we were bringing something that was non-synthetic, non-addictive, that was being really chosen by consumers to say, hey, how do I make my daily a little bit better by choosing these plant-based solutions.
Yeah, and I've not only went cannabis only and no alcohol, but I went plant-based as well. So reduce my meat intakes just so I have a cleaner overall body. Well, let's transition a little bit to omnichannel marketing. It's all about creating a seamless experience for your consumers. And customer wants to see unified messaging, right? Cohesive visuals and consistent collateral on every device and platform. Whether they engage with the Caliva retail store or the brand directly. So what kind of marketing goals should a business set for an omnichannel marketing strategy? Is it more customer experience focused or sales or revenue? What's your recommendation here?
Yeah, I would break it down into two different viewpoints on this. One is from the retailer standpoint, then one is from the brand standpoint. On the retailer standpoint today, and whether it's in California or beyond, there's a lot of different rules and regulations specifically around delivery. But what I would highly recommend any retailer, and they're probably looking at this, but I would examine it closely, is the percentage of people on their website that are actually looking at their website on a mobile phone. And at least in my experience of working and seeing dispensaries, is that at least 75% of their consumers are finding somebody on their mobile phone, and it's usually from an iOS device. And so when you look at that consumer experience, where it's starting from a place where you say, okay, they're mobile first consumer because they're on their phones all the time anyway, and that's how they generally see and view information. Really take a mobile first view if you're a retailer, and when you look at that and say, okay, that's the awareness and some of the consideration about it. They're probably going to Yelp, they're probably going to Google, they're probably looking at some reviews, probably going to Leafly, Weed Maps, getting enough information about where they're going to spend their $100-$200, on the next purchase. They in general also will have a strong preference to be able to order on the phone. Yep. And so how do you have that ordering place, and whether they come into the store and do a pickup, whether they do a curbside pickup or whether they do delivery, I really encourage all retailers to think that mobile first is the way to be able to reach their consumers on a awareness and consideration stage. On the brand, it's a little bit different, I think, for brands. Brands do a great job on their websites, but they today don't attract enough, I'd say, visitors on their websites or on their mobile sites to be able to redirect that traffic to a stockist and to their retailers. So on the brand side of things, I think there's two things to be able to focus on. One is I would still continue to strongly encourage brands to produce great, authentic content and actually have that brand page as the first destination of which to progressively profile their consumer, so they can understand them, continue to communicate with them, and then redirect them as they go for their from their consideration to their, the kind of purchase stage. But also to be able to have a robust set of updated just content. So all of the different marketplaces and stores can actually use great pictures and descriptions and everything else. It's amazing to me in cannabis that still doesn't exist today, where you have these central repositories of product information being managed by a brand, so they can distribute that out to a lot of different points of sales and those types of things. So I think those are two starting blocks for retailers and brands to say, hey, how do I start to enable omnichannel marketing? Those are two areas I'd recommend to start.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you on the mobile first approach. Like we've always, kind of right in line with your numbers. It's upwards of 80% of all the website visitors are mobile. And of that traffic, I think it's upwards of like 70% comes from Google. So, you know where you should put your money. And as far as websites nowadays, like it should be mobile first, should be responsive for tablets and desktop. But in most cases, people want that, the phone is in their pockets. It's an extension of you. And people want accessibility, right? They want to be able to order quick, get in the store for a pickup and be out of there in 5 minutes, right? So
yeah, I mean, I think the most interesting dynamic that I'm watching closely is just this retailer and brand dynamic, over these years, and certainly the retailers still today, at least in California, have the power of marketing, and I would bet that at least 75% of the retailers in California, their number one marketing spend are still billboards, which is crazy, in a lot of different areas on them, and they would generally, most retailers would say, hey, they work. But when you look at brands, it's really, really difficult for a brand to actually do a billboard, because you don't know where you're going to actually go buy that brand. So that call to action is very difficult on that. And so when brands have fewer options to be able to go market, they rely on their retailers, and some of them do co-branded, billboards, or some of them are just doing shelf space, et cetera. And so brands are really pouring a lot of marketing into their retail partners. I see that shifting, the more ubiquitous that brands, come to be, and the more that, I think the retail and competitive retail landscape changes. So I think it'll be interesting to see if retailers can adapt to, I'd say, more modern marketing and more progressive marketing when you start to look at that consideration and awareness stage of having those ads out there and really standing for something different, and being able to look at things like programmatic, look at things like, influencer marketing, look at more, content driven marketing, and for brands to be able to go and really drive that brand awareness and those and start building communities that they can help redirect and point to their retailer of choice, or their delivery service of choice, so they have better control in terms of that final last mile of who's interacting with their brand.
Yeah, I think with the challenges that are being experienced right now in California in the economy, right? People have less money to spend. There's more retailers opening, more delivery services. Like as a 101, like you should know the return on investment or return on ad spend for everything that you're spending money on. And if billboards, if you're just kind of throwing money against the wall and maybe asking a few people in the store if where they heard about you, and if it's a billboard, maybe you credit to that, but it's still a reach. And other platforms have the same kind of challenge. So it's really, as a foundational point for your business, like install Google Analytics, install any third-party tracking that you need to really answer these questions. Like, I'm spending $5,000 on this. How much am I getting in return? From our, the channels that we know that work well is, SEO is going to be number one, and that's a ton of business comes from SEO. I know that Caliva did a exceptional job, especially with your shopping cart and everything that you put together, that you really did did everything you could to make sure that you were discoverable when people are in that consideration phase, whether they're looking for delivery, whether they're looking for specific strain, product category, and so on. Like, you really knocked it out of the park there.
And again, the team certainly took a first party product into first party channels, mindset, and building a brand that was both a store as well as a delivery service and product was a challenge. But I think it was the in those early days. I think that the industry's probably matured and different now. But to your point, I would, again, when any brand is looking to be able to say, hey, where their consumers first going to look for them, people are going to certainly research and look for that volume of reviews, and whether that's the Leafly, Weed Maps, Google or Yelp, they're going to look at the brand, and they're going to look at where to go buy. But today, the trusted expert is still the bud tender. And regardless, at least I've seen within dispensaries, the majority of new customers that they come in, even if they're doing that awareness and consideration on a mobile phone, they still prefer an in real life type of interaction to begin with, and they're interacting with a bud tender. So for the bud tender to be factually accurate and up to date in terms of a broad product set is a challenge. And you got to match that product, that product set to a set of use cases that consumers have. And so that's a lot of responsibility on bud tenders. And I know bud tenders take their jobs very, very seriously. But that's a challenge for a brand and a retailer to be able to say, how do you get that trusted expert to be able to make great recommendations so that consumer walks away going, wow, I was actually pointed to the right direction of a product that actually worked for what my intended outcome was.
Yeah, and then how do you connect that digital, online experience to in store with the bud tender, right? It's like, how do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, a couple things that the parent company marketing team did very successfully recently is had some of their best wellness consultants review products and to be able to go do that. And again, I think that's using your trusted expert in your best form of marketing, your customers or your associate base to be able to provide an overview of a product set. I think that's certainly one. Two is being able to just have that social proof, and in this case it was certainly consumer reviews. And having those consumer reviews and ratings on products will help people make their own informed decisions. But at the end of the day, that's what I find that consumers are looking for. They're looking for trust, and that trust comes from some social proof and really confidence, and that comes from a lot of the peer set. And some of that peer set, if you don't know who that person is, it's a volume basis. But if it's a one-off basis, they need to be a trusted expert. And that today, again, in our industry, is the bud tender.
Yeah, I've always pushed user-generated content and reviews. I always push our partners to do Google first because that's going to help you long-term with your kind of SEO on a local level. And then Yelp number two, just because Yelp is associated with a lot of the it used to be associated with like the Apple and Surrey kind of results, and so it'll help in that front. And then Weed Maps and Leafly are going to be cannabis specific platforms. But some of those platforms have kind of have a bad history or a bad track record when it comes to reviews. So people really lean on Google still. Google is king. Like, it's 93% of all searches online, and there's a lot of things that you can do to, I guess, streamline that engagement and feedback from customers. A couple ideas I have on my side would be QR code at the checkout's a no-brainer. Having a give us your feedback, and boom, they can scan that, goes directly to Google, and they can leave a review. One of the biggest winners, I'd say, across the board, has been an auto connect post-visit text message or email. So if someone comes in the store, if your technology has this automation in place, they can get a text message 10 minutes after they visit the store. How was your experience? How was your conversation with the bud tenders? Give us your feedback. In most cases, they'll give you a 5-star or better, like if you have an exceptional experience like Caliva. So there's just some little things that you can do that are going to go a long way. They don't cost you any money. If the bud tenders there, or the they're on the front lines at the face of your company. They they are doing firsthand sales. They're doing constant education, and it's their job really to ask for that review too. So, training is huge, especially with bud tenders, and I'm sure that's something that your team has implemented across the board.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at most of the reviews today, most reviews have been towards the service, and that service has either been, for that retailer delivery service. It hasn't been towards a brand. And I think one of the unlocks, again, for brands commanding more power in the marketplace is going to be simply product reviews and syndicating those product reviews. And so, today there doesn't exist a bizarre voice where, you can syndicate product reviews, across different platforms. But I think those types of things will come. I think the other thing to keep in mind in the consumer journey, which is different cannabis, it's mainly location based today. When I think, in every other, I'd say consumer category, it's more product based. So you look for your product first and then where to buy it. In cannabis today, it's where do I go buy cannabis? Yeah. And then it's what do I buy once I find out where to go? But I think that will shift. I think that will shift where people will say, hey, I actually want this, canned drink, or I want this, Kiva gummy, or I want this, Caliva flower. Where can I go buy it? And I think that's going to be a major unlock for brands, and I think that will help a consumer, get to what they want. And I think that the maturity of consumers today, we're seeing that more and more, kind of in every state.
Yeah, and you spoke to retailers, you spoke to brands, but what about delivery services? Like, how do you make sure that customer experience is seamless across that channel as well?
Well, certainly the consumer expectations, kind of post-COVID, just accelerated all, consumer expectation of what delivery is. Mm-hmm. And certainly if you're a retailer and you have the ability to go drive, pickup and delivery, getting delivery right is super hard to do. And you have to look at that as almost a separate service, and you have to have some unique proposition to be able to go do that. And so I've seen a lot of different, retailers want to dip their toes in the water of delivery, and it's very challenging to do. But I would recommend to those retailers of the customers that you have that are, both looking at, delivery and pickup and in-store options, to be able to have that convenience of being able to receive cannabis on your terms. I mean, that's really, really powerful. But you have to be able to execute well. And so you don't have to compete against ease in terms of, you don't have to get there in 45 minutes and be the lowest cost provider. But you got to have a great level of service. You got to have customer support. You got to have electronic payments. You have to have the ability to change orders, and it's not easy, and it's not easy to be to integrate. So delivery is really a real challenge, but those who get it right, I think, really provide a differentiated value proposition for their consumers, and hopefully that translates into kind of long-term customer loyalty on that.
Did you take the approach of the ice cream truck, or did you do more like scheduled deliveries for your business?
Well, we started out with delivery in 2017.
Okay.
So we, so we very, very early on, kind of made every mistake in the book in terms of what to do. But we at least when we started off had a very narrow window of, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 3 to 10 in a very small kind of San Jose-esque marketplace. And then we slowly expanded from there, and we had minimum order amounts, and then you did 3 to 10 through through the whole week, and then you expanded your geographic areas, and then you went to kind of that 9 to 10 type of thing. So I think I would recommend any company to be able to slowly expand on that. But certainly scheduled deliveries are a more profitable delivery for us, and at least at Caliva, we weren't ever marketing that we're going to get your weed there the fastest and cheapest. It was that we're going to have great service. We're going to get your order right. You're going to be able to talk to somebody, pick up the phone. You're going to have an online chat. We're going to have great selection of products. You're going to get a very fair price, and you're going to love your delivery driver because they're super stoked to be able to work with us, and you're going to be able to tip them and everything else. So it was just a different value proposition than other companies in the space.
And I mean, how long did it take you to achieve a true omni-channel, strategy with Caliva?
Yeah, I don't know if any if any marketer or if any retailer is ever truly happy with where they're at. I think some of the challenges that you have when you're an omni-channel retailer, especially when you have multiple locations, is inventory, right? So how are you managing your think of your evergreen inventory, which is your product base in throughout the state. Those are the products and the brands you want to drive a lot of brand awareness for. At Caliva, it was the Caliva and the Fun Uncle type of brands. But everyone knows NorCal's a very different market than SoCal, and Diego's a different market than LA, and in LA, Woodland Hills is different than downtown LA. So you have these micro markets, and there's great merchandisers out there who are able to actually buy for some of those micro markets and really understand what some of those local consumers have and need and want, and we certainly experienced that at the parent company when we were able to acquire some of these dispensaries. Learned a lot from those micro markets. So I think really it's not just how do you actually get to omni-channel, but it's how do you get to the right type of product in the market, and then how do you have that service to be able to back up what that inventory is.
Yeah, and just make sure that your messaging and everything is speaking to that audience. Wherever you are in the industry, whether you're value product, fast delivery, or it's more trust and quality of product, like just really know where you stand within the industry, or else you're gonna spend money on advertising campaigns and you're not gonna get success, right? So and
I think, but to your point, that's I would say most, at least retailers today, are solely focused on their direct response and their offers, right? Which is, I'm going to provide a BOGO, 40% off, 50% off, and I'm going to go spend money to go talk about that promo. So you're double spending in terms of what your customer acquisition cost is, and you might be rebuying the actual customer that you already bought that somebody else went to go rebuy. So the notion about doing that, if you thought about the discounts that you put into that, and if you just put it into a ongoing brand awareness campaign through channels like programmatic or others that are going to reach mobile consumers, I would bet over the long term, that brand awareness advertising is actually going to pay off. But the challenge is that just a lot of retailers just aren't in a position to be able to look at that in a longer term basis, and brands haven't had the ability to be able to tell a consumer where to go buy the product. And I think if some of those things change, you'll see a dramatic change of going from retailer to brand in terms of the somewhat of the marketing power of brands in the marketplace.
Agreed. And as a final question before we log off here, like where should businesses start building their omni-channel strategy? Like what platforms should be prioritized and perfected first before moving on to building out the full experience?
Yeah. I mean, I would start off with the brands, and I think Can does a great job in terms of having depth in terms of a story behind what they do, and they do a great job on building content. And when you look at outside of actually just purchasing the product, the ability to go receive their emails, get updates on videos on YouTube, and understand their website, they are engaging their consumer base. And then they're able to activate their consumer base through text messages, et cetera, in terms of where and how to go buy their products. So on the omni-channel basis, something like a Can, I think is a great way to be able to say, I know what stores carry it. I know if I would need to pick up, and I certainly know if I need to go get it delivered, and I can go to get it on demand, or I can go get it the next day. So I think as a brand, they've really done a great job of providing consistent access and ongoing content where you're always engaged. And in terms of retailers, building an omnichannel presence, it really does obviously start with that in real life experience, which is just so critical to be able to have that, newer customer spend 12 to 15 minutes with your bud tender to be able to go do that. But I think pickup is the easiest and one of the most important parts to be able to say, hey, come back and here's how easy pickup is. To do that, you need a good website. And then if it fits within your regulatory framework, I would, strongly encourage that any type of retailer, look at a smaller radius with, minimum order amounts to be able to go, deliver their products to their customers. And certainly, somebody like, the parent company Caliva.com has done a massively, successful job around that in terms of California. But delivery is hard to do, but it's important, I think, over the long term.
Agreed. Well, Dennis, I appreciate the time today and sharing all your insights with our viewers, and kudos to you on the acquisition, and all the best in your future in cannabis and beyond.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Guillermo. I'm really looking forward to the future marketing in cannabis. It keeps us on our toes for sure.
Oh yeah.
But keep it work.
Thank you, Dennis. Cheers.
Right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MediaJel